Mr Speaker, the tension between private and public interests, the tension between the many and the few, lies beneath hundreds of years of struggle in our political tradition. And I take members back to the 14th century, to the Peasants' Revolt, to the Levellers in the 17th century, and the English civil wars that raged across Britain for nearly a century between the parliamentarians and the royalists. I remind members about the Chartists in the 19th century who campaigned for popular sovereignty and a universal franchise, the fight to give women the vote, those who gave their lives in the Second World War to defend democracy, and the spread of parliamentary democracy around the globe in the 21st century.
Sorry to interrupt the member. Order. There's far too much noise coming from the government benches. I'm having difficulty hearing the member. If you want to discuss matters, that's what the lobbies are for. Phil Twyford.
Mr Speaker, I know the members on that side of the House don't want a history lesson, but in my humble opinion, they need one. We shouldn't take the history of our democratic traditions lightly. This House is a shrine to that tradition, and tonight, Mr Speaker, the members on that side of the House are desecrating that shrine. I know the members on the National Party benches think that this issue is not about democracy. I know that they think it's just a technical thing, it's a pragmatic solution, we're just twiddling with the knobs so that we can get the outcomes we want on water management in Canterbury. It's not about democracy, and as Joe Goodhue said, it's just a temporary interruption of our democratic traditions, and they will be resumed in 3.5 years. I know that's what members on the National Party benches think, and I urge them, Mr Speaker, to stop and think about what they are doing to our democratic process. The problem, Mr Speaker, is that the constant companion of this National Party is the temptation to undermine the public interest, to undermine the common good in favour of stacking the deck in the interests of their business mates. They've done it in Auckland over the last 12 months, where we've seen Rodney Hyde and John Key and Stephen Joyce kicking away the safeguards against privatisation of our public assets. We've seen it in the corporatisation of local government. And in Canterbury, the thirst for irrigation, the insatiable hunger for more dairy farming on the Canterbury Plains. It's so tempting for powerful business interests to say that the process of democracy is too slow, it's too messy, it's too inefficient. We could run it so much better if you just get the people out of the show and let us make the decisions. Mr Speaker, subsidiarity is a principle that is much spoken of, and it is allegedly the founding principle of our system of local government. And I say allegedly because in our system there are very few checks and balances on executive power, even with the advent of MMP. We have a unicameral parliament and a system that allows very little challenge to the power of the executive. Local government in our system is one way that power can be shared between the powerful and the powerless, between the centre and the periphery. And what this government is doing tonight in this House with this bill is the opposite of subsidiarity. It shows an absolute contempt and disregard for local government as part of our constitution in this country. They paid lip service in the Auckland super city reforms to subsidiarity while stripping out the decision-making and the powers of local communities and centralising it. And what are they doing? With this bill, Mr Speaker? They're abrogating the democratic rights of up to 500,000 people in Canterbury so that they can more efficiently allocate the rights to water. Well, Mr Speaker, I say that is dangerous. It is dangerous to our political system. It's dangerous to our democracy. Why? Because to shut the people out of decision-making, even for a 3.5-year interregnum, sends a very powerful message. And what is that message? The message is you are not capable of governing yourself. That's what the message says. Even if you pay the rates, even if you pay the taxes, even if you have to live with the consequences of the decisions of your elected representatives, you are not capable. But there is a superior class of person that we know that we can shoulder tap who can make these decisions. And that superior class, Mr. Speaker, are the hand-picked mates of this National Party who this government trusts to make the decisions of the people of Canterbury, to make decisions on your behalf. You see, it turns out, Mr. Speaker, that for this national government, not everyone is equal. Not every person is equal in value and not equal in importance. They're not trusted to make the tough decisions. They're not trusted to govern themselves. Not in Auckland and not in Canterbury. And where will be next, Mr. Speaker? This bill strikes at the heart of our democracy and the idea that in the political sphere, no matter whether you're rich or poor, no matter whether you're brown, white or yellow, which side of the tracks you grew up on, which political party you support, that we're all equal and each of us equally can have our political voice. One of the two ministers who's responsible for this disgraceful bill is Rodney Hyde, the Minister of Local Government. And he's fond of quoting the principle, the sacred principle of one person, one vote. Well, Rodney Hyde talks about democracy out one side of his mouth, but out of the other he's busy handing over the assets of Auckland to his mates and at the same time abrogating the democratic institution of regional government in Canterbury and suspending elections for 3.5 years. Suspending elections. That has a sort of ring to it that we're familiar with. Yeah, and other places closer to home.
He used to say that.
Why is that? Because the 14 democratically elected councillors in Environment Canterbury couldn't resolve a system for allocating water rights. That's why. So if the Auckland Super City can't agree on a regional transport plan, why don't we just sack the new Auckland Council next year if they can't agree a plan for public transport? Yeah, what if some provincial council can't agree on whether Rio Tinto should be allowed to build a mine in their area? Well, let's sack them. Or what about if some other regional council can't agree a merger plan? Well, let's just do away with them, because they obviously can't be trusted to govern themselves. They can't be trusted to make decisions in the interests of the people who elected them. I want to quote, Mr. Speaker, the regulatory impact statement, which makes the case very powerfully for the kind of decision that this government, these ministers have made with this bill. The paper sets out a number of options that were open to the government in considering a response to the problem of water rights in Canterbury. There's a number of things they could have done. They could have installed a commissioner advisor. They could have used the existing powers in the RMA. They could have put in commissioners only for the business of allocating water rights. They could have invested energy and resources into the Canterbury water management strategy specifically. They could have provided targeted assistance. What did they do, Mr. Speaker? They chose the most intrusive, the most undemocratic and the most authoritarian solution by sacking 14 democratically elected councillors. Mr. Speaker, in a few weeks, members of this House will be turning out on Anzac Day at cenotaphs and memorials up and down this country. We will pay homage to those who gave their lives in the Second World War and other conflicts to defend democracies. I hope the members on that side of the House will hang their heads not in reverence but in shame.